What do you think? Which of these two products of our everyday life consumes more water during its production process? Make a guess. So was your guess correct or wrong? Are you surprised about the amount of water that is needed to produce just 1 kilo of those items? Well, you now already learned the main game mechanism of our board game Terva, but before explaining its rules further, let's first dive into the sustainability topic of so-called virtual water.
Water is in fact one of the most valuable resources on Earth, and it's obviously a fundamental one for us and all living beings. However, fresh water, which we need to survive, is limited. Water in a region must satisfy the needs of the population and businesses alike. But rising industrialization and population, especially in developing countries, put even more stress to the existing water sources. For example, some 70% of freshwater resources are used for agricultural purposes. This can become unsustainable if too much water is retrieved and nature cannot provide the sufficient resources. Just recently, a US-American brewery was forbidden to operate in Mexico, following a referendum which saw the population decide in favor of preserving the freshwater resources. This story hints at the need to account for a wider range of stakeholders in investment decisions, namely those affected by the utilization of freshwater. Since water is not distributed equally in the world, its use is also very disproportionate. Europe and North America rarely have to worry about shortage of fresh water. Differently goes for some regions in Africa and Asia, for example. According to the WHO, around 785 million people lack access to basic drinking water. By 2025, half of the world's population will be living in water-stressed areas. This is a problem for the UN, which has declared that access to water is a human right. With SDG 6, it is committed to ensuring availability and the sustainable management of water for everyone. This means reducing disparities and wastes. But how to achieve a more sustainable use of water? It is vital to track the amount of water that is used, since it is not an endless resource. The water footprint is an indicator that does just that, measuring the volume of water that individuals, communities, businesses or products consume directly or indirectly. Virtual water in particular is the water footprint of a product calculated as the sum of the amount of water that goes into production of that product at each stage. It makes a distinction between three types of virtual water: green, blue and gray, depending if the water used remains fresh water or is polluted afterwards. Once we are aware of the amount of water that is used in a given product, we can now make more conscious decisions, knowing the larger impact that a certain product has. The water footprint of a product is particularly worrying when the water used is retrieved from regions where water is already scarce. This can harm the ability of nature to provide the necessary resources, and often the poor population is the victim of this unsustainable usage of water. Therefore, understanding one's own water footprint is the aim of our game. It is a first step towards becoming more attentive about the consumption of water and its global impact. So now that you have understood the topic of virtual water, let's introduce you to our board game Terva.
The players find themselves in the desert city of Terva, where water is very scarce and precious. That's why they have to try to make the right decisions and consume as little virtual water as possible in their everyday life. Terva is a board game that can be played by 2 to 6 people. Here you can see the setup at the start of a 4-player game. It consists of a board, different types of cards, wooden beads, cups to fill in the amount of water consumed, and 1 die. Let's look at the board in more detail. We have 42 fields and the lake of Terva in the middle, which is filled with wooden beads representing virtual water. Players roll the die clockwise and go forward by the respective number and then draw a card. When the lake is reached, the game is over. As you can see, there are different types of fields that the players can land on. The green and blue fields represent the product card decks. When arriving on a green or blue field, the player has to draw 2 product cards of the same deck and make a guess of which item consumes less virtual water, just as you did at the beginning of this video. Besides, there are red question cards where players have to prove their knowledge about virtual water and how they can save it in their real life. When answering them correctly, they can move forward or put back beads from the cup into the lake. When drawing an action card, good or bad things might happen to you, like a sandstorm crossing your way and throwing you back. The grey fields are only relevant for the Terra Expert version, where the topic of virtual water is tackled in more detail, namely including the concept of green, blue and grey water. So let's play. You roll the die, go forward, and on the blue field you draw 2 blue product cards without turning them around. Now ask yourself which item consumes less virtual water and say out your guess loudly so that everyone can hear it. Now turn around the cards. Was your guess right or wrong? This is where the beads in the lake come into play. There are 3 different sizes representing different amounts of virtual water. When your guess was correct and you chose the card with the lower water footprint, put its respective amount of virtual water out of the lake into your cup. For 1 kilogram of beef, this would mean 1 large, 5 medium and 5 small beads. If your guess was wrong, you have to fill in the higher amount of water into your cup. Of course, it's not only chocolate and beef that need much water during their production process, but basically every consumer product that we eat or use has a certain water footprint. By shuffling the decks after they are used, many different card comparing situations are possible. And this is basically how you play all the time until the first player arrives at the lake to take a swim maybe, if enough water is left. However, not the one arriving first at the lake, but the one with the lowest individual virtual water level in their cup will win the game.
The game is primarily aimed at children from 12 years of age. We chose this minimum age because the children need to calculate and understand high numbers. Children in particular are to be sensitized to become more careful and economical in their use of water from an early age. Teachers can also use the game as teaching material and thus playfully explain the big topic of virtual water and its global connections. It can also be used in universities to teach pedagogical methods and provide playful ideas. The learning goal of the game is to introduce the sustainability problem of water scarcity to children and young people in particular. Attention is drawn to the fact that there is a shortage of water in many countries and to the influence that people have in their everyday habits. The aim is to question the significance of the consumption behavior of society in everyday life and thereby get more acquainted with the topic. As this is more difficult to grasp for children, the game attempts to simplify this and use the example of water to introduce sustainable behavior. The goal is to realize a direct connection between products and their virtual water footprint. Summarizing, it is provided to make the invisible virtual water finally visible and better understandable for children by introducing the wooden beads in the Lake of Terra that represent virtual water. It is important to strictly avoid portraying water consumption as very bad in general, so that children may be reluctant to use water or other products at all in the future. It is a question of showing in which products water can be used in a sustainable way and in which products this is not the case. In this way, people can find inspiration for their everyday lives and strive for a more responsible consumption. Thinking about their own ideas for problem solving provides a creative learning effect. Another learning effect is decision making. A feeling for a fairer world should be awakened so that players learn to appreciate their own privileges and perhaps develop compassion for other people who are not doing as well, inspiring everyone to strive for a fairer world.
With our game, we cover a rather unregarded topic. By looking into Google Trends, it becomes obvious that the carbon footprint receives far more attention than the water footprint. In summary, by combining a board, dice, cards and tangible elements like the cups and the wooden beads within one game, Terra provides a lot of fun as well as an important knowledge transfer. By including different game mechanisms, the game is more exciting and it can even become fun for the kids to save water. maybe even in their real lives.